I think opportunities for actuaries are expanding. But first I want to reflect on just what the role of the actuaries is. To me, actuary is synonymous with insurance. Somebody has to do the math. Somebody has to do the calculations to figure out the risk. And insurance is needed to have a well-ordered society. You can't imagine starting a business or starting a family without addressing the financial risk. So to the extent that society is getting more complicated and the risks are evolving, there's a growing need for actuaries. And it may be in the space of identity theft, it may be in cybersecurity, autonomous vehicles, but somebody's going to have to evaluate the risk behind all of these evolving ways that we interact. So I think, in short, there's a growing need for actuaries as society is getting more complicated. Being part of the board that adopted the strategic plan for 2017 through 2021, there are many aspects to it, but there are two that I would tend to focus my attention on. And I think that they're interrelated. First, the globalization of both the industry and the profession. Our syllabus has to remain current. Many of our members practice in North America, but the companies they work for may own subsidiaries outside of North America. And the company I work for, MetLife, works in 30 jurisdictions around the world. Or they may be owned by a company that is outside of North America. So I believe our syllabus has to remain current, and there are global regulations, accounting standards that we have to reflect. But I also think that we need to be able to interact with organizations, other actuarial organizations around the world. A lot of our attention's been focused on interacting with the actuarial organizations in North America. But I think as we've defined our role to be global, I think it suggests how we should be interacting with other actuarial organizations. There's a need for local actuarial organizations to support local memberships and to interact with local stakeholders, especially regulators. We can't be the face to regulators in as many jurisdictions as the SOA does business in. It's just not possible. So it's really imperative that we are able to interact with local organizations globally in order to be effective for the profession. We're going through a tremendous amount of technology change. First let me address predictive analytics and the role of big data. The Society of Actuaries has adopted changes to the curriculum already. Again, part of the board that I was part of to implement these changes on both the ASA syllabus and our very first certificate program in predictive analytics. And that speaks to the beginnings of how actuaries change the way they work. In the past, we all learned traditional statistical methods. Traditional statistical methods were really around trying to find a signal in a very small amount of data, trying to extrapolate for maximum advantage from a small amount of data. But the data is changing, and now we're really faced with trying to analyze almost the opposite problem, having tremendous amount of data, whether it's data from social media or from other data sources like the genome, DNA testing. So now we're faced with trying to understand what are real signals from tremendous amounts of data and what might be fake signals. So the techniques are evolving, and that's why we've adopted predictive analytics. And I think that's going to position our actuaries well for that type of change. But I think the changes are going to go well beyond that. Machine learning and AI, let's face it, if you can have a self-driving car, what is the future for actuaries? Maybe you could have a computer design insurance products. Maybe you could have a computer design the underwriting manual and price the products. So we really don't know where machine learning and AI is going to take us, but I think the SOA should be positioned to at least analyze that and react by making sure our candidates and our profession is prepared. You know, when I was a young actuary, it was almost a rite of passage that you joined the education committees and either got involved with grading exams or got involved with developing exams. I'm not sure that actuaries today have the same commitment or maybe the same flexibility. You know, the demands of employers have grown, and people just may not have time for that. So we need other ways to engage our young professionals, and probably the strongest way I could think of is through support of local actuarial clubs. I mean, there's a need for interaction. We spend a lot of time doing technical work, and we're really engaged in numbers and computer programs, but the social aspect is very important too. And I think the actuarial clubs could form that. Other organizations like the Casualty Society have a more formal relationship with some of these clubs. We support them. The SOA supports them a little bit more informally. And I think maybe we could have a greater role. The SOA could have a greater role in supporting local clubs. You know, the other way to engage the young people is for the SOA to continue with the listening program that the board has been engaged with for the last several years. You know, go out. The SOA board members have gone out and went to employers, visited employers, and interacted with our young membership, really to hear the concerns that they have about the profession, about the SOA. But you know, clearly, in my opinion, we haven't done enough. There is a relative lack of engagement of our membership base, and I think it's one of the issues that needs to be addressed. The SOE is a global organization. It's part of our strategic plan and our strategic vision. We haven't always acted as a global organization. The board commissioned a task force on expanding our education into international markets. I was part of that task force. We surveyed many constituents in Asia and Latin America around their needs. And you know, what we found was that probably English serves the purpose for the assessments in terms of taking exams, but that there was a relative lack of content in our syllabus focused on international markets. Almost all of our syllabus has a North American focus, either US or Canada. We don't really have in our syllabus materials related to IFRS or Solvency II. These are very important standards around the world. And although we can't nuance our syllabus for every geography, we should be able to address some of these standards that apply across multiple geographies outside the US and Canada. So that's one area, by continuing to support the International Committee and support the needs of the syllabus. In addition, I think it's imperative that we interact with the local actuarial societies in the different countries, because they've got the read on the local marketplace, local standards for how insurance should be done, their relationship with the regulators. The things that we take for granted here may not apply there. The standards could be very different in China than they are in the US. And we need to recognize that. We need to support our membership, which would typically overlap with a local actuarial organization. So, and that should be kind of seamless for the member. I also think we've got a role in providing continuing education to places in the way that they want to receive it. I was a speaker at the first China symposium, and probably I was the only speaker that actually spoke in English. And although they're quite comfortable with assessments and our exams being in English, the members there much rather preferred to have their meetings conducted in Chinese. It was a surprise to me. So I think understanding that and being flexible and adapting where we can is the best way to serve the international growth. Well, I feel I am the best choice for President-Elect of the Society of Actuaries. Firstly, I'm in a global role. I'm the MetLife Global Chief Actuary. I've supervised over 1,200 actuaries in jurisdictions, over 30 jurisdictions around the world. So there's definitely a breadth to my experience geographically, globally, and there's also a depth, a range of practice I've had through my career that touches almost all of the practice areas. People may not realize, but although I've spent most of my career in the life and annuity practice area, I started out my career in the general insurance area. I worked 2 years in workers' compensation. I've also served on the advisory committee for my own company's pension plan, so I'm familiar with pensions. And I've worked on, because MetLife is global, health products throughout the world, including ranging from long-term care in the U.S., but also hospital bed insurance in Japan and critical illness riders. So I really feel I've got a depth and a breadth that cuts across geographies and areas of practice. But I think most important, I am a good leader. And I think that the society needs a good leader to express and affect its vision. We've got a strong strategic vision statement, but we need to put it in play. And with the experience I've got as the Global Chief Actuary of MetLife, as the Secretary Treasurer of the Society of Actuaries, I'm a member of the leadership team of the Society of Actuaries. I'm also the president of the Chief Actuaries Forum, which is represented by the Chief Actuaries of 15 of the largest employers of actuaries in North America. So together, these things give me a very broad and deep experience that I think will serve the Society of Actuaries well.